So if you ever get a leak under your sink, it's never fun, but it's actually not too bad of a job, and it's pretty simple. The system here isn't too complicated, so we're gonna go ahead and remove anything that's under the sink here, because there's probably gonna be some water coming down. So just with the water dripping and leaking in some spots, it kind of glued this box down, and it's all soggy kind of. So you can see that this is kind of at an angle. And that means this pipe here is too short and it's just barely getting caught by the P-trap seal. So these are all hand tight, so we can remove these by hand. And of course I'm just gonna put a tray under here, and this will catch all the water that comes out. So let's go ahead and take these off. There's some of the water. Now the P-trap is loose. Should be able to wiggle it off. So you can just see how short that is. It definitely needs to be longer, and it also looks like we have a clog in there, which doesn't help. Now we'll go ahead and dump this. Oops, missed a little bit there. We'll dump this into a bucket just so there's not so much water. So now we're just gonna go ahead and pull out that clog that actually was, I don't think that was a clog. I think it was just a little bit of buildup around there that eventually could have formed into a clog. But that wasn't the problem. This is obviously too short, so let's go ahead and fix that. So this is the tailpipe, and you can see on this side we have two short ones to get the correct distance, but this one has the ripples here, so it can expand actually, so it's adjustable, and that'll help get the correct size. So we're gonna go ahead and take off this piece here. So now we're gonna go ahead and take off the little wrapper here, and this comes with the nut here. This was about $4 for this piece here. You could get the whole entire pipe there as well for $4, but this has the adjustable, which does help. So now we're gonna go ahead and thread this on. Just make sure it's going on straight. Since you're threading with plastic, you don't want to cross thread it. So this is the one that fit on the drain, but this one, the new one, the thread is actually a little bit different. It will fit, but it just barely fits. It's really tight going on there. It was so tight, in fact, that it was actually starting to spin the drain here, and you can see the plumber's putty in there has started to come out, so that will just slow the process down. We have to put more in there, else that'll be... So these rings that hold these in can get pretty tough and really corroded. What we have here is a pair of pliers, and then a big pair of pliers holding that. So that has a lot of leverage there. And then we had these chain drive vice grips on the big nut down there, and pushing as hard as we can, the nut actually broke apart. And I guess there must have been no other way. This was so stuck in there that this actually broke apart. I mean, that is really corroded. So you can see this is broken here, so we're gonna do our best to try to pry this off and get it off of here. There we go. These tabs are conveniently placed for ripping the nut off. I have a feeling that's not what they were meant for, but hey, got it off. Go ahead and pull this whole assembly out. Yay, finally it came out. Since the nut broke, we need to come up with another way of securing it. Here's the original drain. I cleaned it up. It's hard to tell it was the original drain. I even buffed the rim here. And then we have this drain here that we had laying around. And it has this system here. And what this does, this washer goes on there, and then this piece threads onto the drain. And what this does is the nuts that are all along the outside here, come on, go on, there we go. All the nuts, these screw on, which pushes the washer this way, and which will seal it to the sink. So it's similar to that nut, except these, all three of them push it on. So this should work on the sink. So this sink tailpipe, really, I've never seen one not work, but in this case, this one is not threading on properly. So this is the drain that we have on the sink. If we try threading this on, you gotta line it up just perfect, and I can't get it to actually start threading on. It should thread on really easy. Here we have another drain, it's a standard thread. And then if we try putting it on here, even here, that's not straight. Actually, yeah, it shouldn't be trying to cross thread like this. If I try threading it into one of the P-traps here, I can get it to thread on this thread. So it's something with these metal, it should thread, it shouldn't be as tight as it is. It doesn't want to thread on when it should be, and it really shouldn't be that tight. So here is basically all the threads we've ever used. This just threads on, no problem. It's not tight, and it goes on really easy, and that's how it should be going on. But I have no idea why they would have the thread a little bit different where it doesn't even fit onto here. I can't get it to thread on correctly, and it's so tight. To get this thread to even start to go on, what I had to do is take a knife and just scrape that first thread down a little bit. And it wasn't until I did that this was actually able to start to thread on. And since this nut was so tight to get on there and we were really cranking on it, it broke the seal with the plumber's putty. So we had to take this whole thing out, which made it it should have been an easy job, but made it into a hard job just because the manufacturer has a thread that's too small on here. So it's not very much smaller, but it's just enough that it doesn't work. So if you're gonna be buying one of these Plumpack fittings, just walk over and check it in the fitting and see if this threads on. And it could be the same mold, but just make sure that this threads on like it should, because in our case, it just made it into a big deal and a much bigger job. In order to just reshape the threads here on the plastic to actually be able to put it in, I have some pliers here. I've just worked this in, taking my time and just kind of reshaping these threads so this will actually go in. Because before, that thread was way too tight, it was too small, and it wasn't gonna fit in, but now I'm actually able to start to thread this in. So now I'm going to put a little bit of silicone grease on here, and it's very important that you're gonna be using silicone grease instead of any other grease, because any other grease that is petroleum based, most greases are petroleum based, so that would dissolve the plastic, but silicone grease is not, and that's the reason why it's not dissolving the plastic. So this will really help us put these threads on. They'll go on easier, and it'll be easier to take off next time. So now what we're gonna do is take out a good piece of the plumber's putty here. And what we're going to do is work this into like a snake. So it's kind of like working with Play-Doh, but we're just gonna roll this out until it can wrap all the way around the drain here. This is just kind of a hard part here. So now I'm gonna try to wrap this around here. And we're just trying to keep an even, like a consistency. So I'm just gonna try to smear this so one spot's not much thinner than another. So now with the plumber's putty all on there, we're gonna go ahead and drop this in. Make sure it's centered. And one important thing is whenever you're putting this on and we're gonna tighten that, it's gonna squeeze out a little bit along the edge, but you never want the metal from the sink and the metal on the drain to touch, because once that happens, you're no longer gonna have the seal and it's gonna be able to. So now we're gonna go ahead and put this rubber ring on. This was on here before. and then this metal ring here that goes on top of that. And now we can screw this piece on that'll hold everything together. There we go. Now we'll thread this on as much as we can. And now we can start to turn these. When you're putting these in, you just want to tighten them hand tight. And when you're looking up from the top, you should just see it squeeze out a little bit. And then once that's there, then you know you've tightened it enough, because once it reaches metal to metal, then you've lost your seal. Now we can go ahead and put this in, and we haven't totally tightened these as far as they can, to the point where it's squeezing out yet, because if once it moves, we don't want to be breaking the seal. So I'm just putting this on. I have a pair of pliers on top. If you look at those, and that's what I'm going to use, and I'm going to hold that, and now I can really tighten this nut here. So now we'll go ahead and center the plug where it should be. It's important that it's centered. That would be a bad mistake. So now we have it centered, we can go ahead and tighten. Now we'll go ahead and start tightening these bolts. Just make sure to tighten them all evenly, and just keep an eye on up here just to see when that starts to squeeze out. So it's not really squeezing out too much here, just a little bit. So we probably could have put a little bit more in. It might be enough though, so we're gonna go ahead and put it back together and see if it leaks. But if it does, we're just pull it back off and put a little bit more. So now to put the P-trap on, we're going to put this cap on and then this fitting here. And what this does is this is going to be pushing into the P-trap here, and that's like a compression fitting, and it's gonna help it seal. Now I'm gonna pull this down a little bit, just so we wanna be careful not to ruin the seal we have up there, so I'm just doing it lightly. And just check it with the P-trap here, and you want it to go down as far as you can. If we can get it to go this far, that would be great. So right there is good. It's extended just as far as it should be. So now I'm going to take this and push it in, and then make sure you have to put them on basically at the same time and slide that on. And now we can start threading these back together. So now we'll go ahead and fill up the sink, and then we'll drain it all at one time, kind of give it a blast and see if that will make it leak. And now we're also testing the seal around here. So under the sink, we're just looking under here to see if there's any water. I don't see anything, and I'm not seeing anything leaking out of here, but we'll really test it once we take that drain out. Pan with a little bit of toilet paper in there, because even one drip of toilet paper, one drip of water on the toilet paper, you'll definitely see it. So if anything leaks, we'll know. So now we'll go ahead and turn the water off, and let's drain the water. Alright, so it looks like I don't see any drips yet. It looks pretty dry. We have one drip right there. It looks like, yeah, there's definitely a drip there. It could have been my hand, but actually if we look right up here, I can see little water droplets forming on the back. Keep it tight up here with the pliers, and then down here with these bigger pliers, I'm gonna tighten this. And yeah, that's definitely loose. I can feel it moving too easy. So we'll just tighten this up. This definitely feels like it was the problem. Fresh toilet paper under there. It's clean, it'll show the drips. Now we have the sink filled up again, and let's go ahead and drain it for the second time. So if we look under here, I wiped off the pipes just to make sure there's no water left on them, and just keep an eye and see if it's dripping anywhere. So far I don't see anything. Now we have everything checked, and it isn't leaking just by the first look. We're gonna leave this toilet paper under here overnight, and as we use it, we'll tell if it's leaking at all, but it's much better than what it was before. We're getting good grip. Before we were only getting like a 1/4 inch of grab on that pipe, which is why it was leaking. But now we can go ahead and put the tools away and just kind of clean up a little.